Kyrgios is the first player in the history of the Citi Open in DC to win the title for singles and doubles on the men's side. He breaks his 3-year title drought. It had been 3 years since he had won a title, and surprisingly, it was at in DC that he won his last singles title, and he does it again. He didn't get broken all week, held his serve all week, looked comfortable for the most part, was able to show up in some tie breaks and had a really entertaining match against Tiafoe. I think that was probably the most entertaining one out of the whole week. Nothing against Nishoka, who had an incredible week. Nishoka came into the tournament on a losing streak, wasn't, the hottest player on tour, but had a great week, especially in the semifinals, defeating Rublev. So, shout out to Nishoka for getting to the final, but Kyrgios always looked in control in the finals, beating him 6-4, 6-3, breaking him in the first game of both sets. So after he broke him in the first game of each set, and Nishoka served first on both sets, so he got broken like right away. It was almost like a given that he was gonna win the first and second set once he broke Nishoka to start each set. Kyrgios didn't get broken all week. He broke Nishoka to start each set. It was a wrap. Nishoka did play better in both sets as it progressed, but he was never able to really put pressure on Kyrgios and really make the match interesting. Any of the sets, it really looked like once Kyrgios broke Nishoka, it was a wrap. Kyrgios was going to be able to hold his serve, and Nishoka was, just fighting to stay alive, fighting to hold his serve, and hopefully find a way to break Kyrgios for the first time in the week. And it didn't happen. So shout out to Kyrgios, who's playing some of his best tennis of his career. I would say he's playing his best tennis. Finals in Wimbledon, quarterfinals at Indian Wells. He's gone deep in almost every single tournament that he's played this year. He wins back-to-back titles as well. He won in Atlanta with Kokonakis. He wins right here in DC with Jack Sock. So he's just killing it in singles. He's killing it in doubles. Kyrgios seems to be taking his tennis seriously. He still has his outbursts. He still, gets into it with the official, with the umpire. He still, does a lot of trick shots, goes for the spectacular. During this tournament, he had, his tweeners. He even attempted to go behind the back on one of them, missed it by like this much. He's still very entertaining. Like I said, his match this week against Tiafoe was exquisite. Like, I'm a fan of both of them. I love Kyrgios. I wouldn't say I love him. I love his entertaining. I could do with less of his antics and arguing and all that stuff, but I do love his game. And Tiafoe, even though he's known to choke some leads and not be able to close some games, I think Tiafoe is super entertaining too. Like, I really like Tiafoe. Like, he's one of my favorite players. So when it was Kyrgios versus Tiafoe, like, I knew it was going to be a great match. It was going to be an entertaining match. They're both probably the players on tour that know how to interact with the crowd the best. Like, really, like, get involved. Kyrgios would go up to, people on the stands and ask him where he should serve. I think that really keeps the audience entertained. It's like something different. Tiafoe, after some points, he goes and high fives the crowd, keeps everyone pumped. Like, the energy from that game was just exquisite. Like, I think that's where tennis needs to go to attract a younger crowd, to break away from that, gentleman. I know that's part of the history, but if tennis wants to evolve, wants to attract the modern fans, I think that's where it needs to go. Not necessarily the antics by Kyrgios, but, asking the fans where to serve, giving some high fives after a good rally, after good points, really pumping up the crowd. Like, I think that's all good for the sport. But overall, Kyrgios is killing it right now. He's killing it. Back-to-back doubles titles, wins his first singles title in 3 years at the Citi Open. I thought he was going to take a break after such a grueling schedule these last 2 weeks, but he is scheduled to play at Montreal tomorrow versus Baez. And if he beats Baez, he should be on a collision course to play against Medvedev in the second round of the Montreal Open. And that would be amazing. Like, they played earlier this year at the Australian Open, and that was Kyrgios barely coming into form, barely coming back from, 2 years of being a part-time tennis player. right now Kyrgios is in the thick of it. If anything, is a complete opposite. Like when the Australian Open, out of form, coming back from being a part-time player for the last part of 2 years, and now Kyrgios is going into this after 2 grueling weeks. The last month and a half, 2 months, he's been like really going at it at tennis. So if anything, this is the opposite. He might be feeling some fatigue, but his fitness looks good. He seems to be enjoying his tennis. I follow him on Instagram. He seems to be having a good time. He seems like his girlfriend really changed his life. He seems to have just a way more positive outlook, and he looks happy. So I think that really translates to his tennis. And like I said, all the antics and all the personal stuff away. We'll see how his case resolves outside of tennis. But his tennis on the court has been entertaining, super entertaining. It's fun to watch, and we honestly got to talk about Kyrgios being one of the favorites to win the U.S. Open, especially if Nadal is not there, if Djokovic is not there. Medvedev, is still getting back into form from not playing Wimbledon, injuries and all that stuff. Kyrgios legit has to be like a top 5 contender for the U.S. Open, and depending on how he does in Cincinnati and Montreal, like he could be seeded, and he could be one of the dangerous players going into the U.S. Open. But like I said, congratulations to Kyrgios for winning the doubles and singles in DC, the first male player to do that. Shout out Kyrgios.